Hey guys. This is what if Naruto was corrupted by Kyuubi's evil influence. Young and alone Naruto is corrupted by Kyuubi's evil influence, becoming the very monster that Minato died to seal away.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
With the power of the Nine Tails in his grasp, only one man can save Naruto from his inner demon, the legendary super pervert Jiraiya. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 1: Homecoming. Propped against the wall, Jiraiya stared down at the blank white page of his notepad. The Toad Sage remained that way for a few more minutes before he sighed dejectedly and slipped the notes into his vest. It seemed that the muses weren't on his side today. His mind wandered as he continued to wait in the reception room outside of his sensei's office. What had been so imperative that it required his immediate attention? And if this issue was so important, why had he been standing outside of the Hokage's office for nearly 2 hours now? It just didn't make any sense. Of course, nothing about his unexpected return made any sense. The old lecher had been lurking around the local hot spring, catching up on his ever-important research, when a small orange monkey suddenly poofed into existence on his shoulder. If not for his ninja training, the Toad Sage may have very well screamed like a little girl. He may have been a veteran ninja, but there was no shame in being startled when primates began popping out of thin air. The lion tamarin had rolled its eyes at Jiraiya's un-ninja-like behavior before handing him a communique from the village, then promptly poofing away. The transcript he received had been heavily encoded, and took close to an hour to decipher. Decoded, the message was mockingly concise. In short, it had read, "You are hereby ordered to return to Konoha. We need to talk." Grudgingly, Jiraiya had followed the Hokage's orders. He began the long trek from Lightning Country back to the village hidden in the leaves, cursing his sensei as he traveled past numerous hot springs that were open for mixed bathing. That tragic incident aside, however, the rest of his journey had gone by without issue. Only after arriving at Konoha did he slowly begin to realize that something was wrong. As the Sannin had wandered through the streets, waving to the familiar faces he saw, he got the distinct impression that the villagers were hiding from something. Their eyes darted back and forth nervously. It was like they were expecting to be attacked or something, and when he'd greeted them, they just sent him a startled look before quickly hurrying on their way. At first Jiraiya had thought nothing of it. Perhaps they were just running late. Yes, that was it. They were all just running a little late, that was all. He paused. Every single villager, all at the same time, right. From there, things just got weirder. As he began to approach the Hokage's tower, a flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye caught his attention. Leaping across the rooftops in tight formation were no less than 20 ANBU. That had definitely set him on high alert. But it was only after entering the Hokage's tower that he realized the extent of this strange behavior. Instead of being swallowed up in the building's typical noisy din, he was instead greeted by silence. Dead silence? The staff had remained perfectly still when he'd entered the room. It was almost as if any sudden movement would spell instant death for everyone in the room. Their deer-in-the-headlights phase had only lasted for a few seconds before the room slowly returned to the hectic environment that he remembered it to be. But now the pervert was certain. Something was horribly wrong. "Jiraiya-sama," addressed the soft-spoken receptionist from behind her desk. His head snapped up and he turned to look at woman. "The Hokage will see you now." Jiraiya nodded and moved stiffly towards the heavy wooden doors. He pushed them open and was immediately greeted by the face of his old teacher. Or at least he guessed it was his teacher's face. The man looked terrible. Gaunt, hollow eyes stared back at him, sad and gray, as though all the laughter had been forcibly ripped out of the old man's life. His mouth appeared to be twisted downward in an eternal scowl that locked the man's pipe securely in place. Small particles of dust and soot had collected on the brim of the Hokage's ceremonial hat, and Jiraiya idly wondered if his teacher had moved at all during his many years of absence. But that wasn't what shocked him. What shocked him was the new set of scars that twisted across the old Hokage's face. 4 angry purplish lines ran across the length of his face, starting at his jawbone and traveling upward, past his lips, across his nose, and over his right eye until they disappeared underneath his hat. It was almost as if he'd been raked across the face by the claws of an animal. But surely that couldn't have been right. "What happened to you, old man?" the Toad Sannin questioned, a look of concern spreading across his features. His teacher ignored the question and released a long stream of blue-tinged smoke into the air. "Please take a seat, Jiraiya." The scars on his mouth writhed angrily as he spoke. The Toad Sannin gave his teacher a quizzical look before taking a tentative step forward. Behind him the double doors slammed shut, trapping him in the dimly lit, smoke-filled room. He suddenly felt very claustrophobic. The old Hokage took a long drag on his pipe, saturating even more of the room's dwindling air supply with the sweet-scented smoke when he exhaled. Judging by the amount that was hovering above their heads, Jiraiya could safely assume that his sensei had been here for a while. He just hoped that this wouldn't take too long. He still wasn't very good at sitting still and paying attention. A grin spread across his face. Not unless hot springs were involved. "Still perverted, I see," the old man stated knowingly. "Maybe." Both men chuckled at this, slowly tapering off until silence once again permeated the room. At least his sensei still acted the same. "What's this all about, old man? Your letter said something about us needing to." He trailed off when he noticed a pained look on teacher's face. Sarutobi gazed through an ash-smeared window down at the village. Even now, hordes of A&B were the only things that could be seen. "Jiraiya," he began, still looking through the window, "when was the last time you were in the village?" The younger man flinched at his leader's purely ceremonial question. He was well aware that old man Sarutobi liked to keep up the appearance of being a harmless, washed-up old ninja, even in front of his students it seemed. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Though he appeared old, his skills were just as sharp, if not sharper, than they'd been when he was in his prime. Always pushing oneself further was just another aspect of life for a shinobi. If you managed to survive long enough to experience the wondrous roller coaster of ghosts of missions past and chronic joint pain that encompassed old age, you were able to do one of two things. You could either A. Retire and live out the rest of your life in moderate comfort, becoming forever known as that old ninja. Or B. Mold your mind into a weapon scarier than any jutsu, becoming forever known as that old ninja. Not even a kill-me-orange-wearing, ramen-obsessed moron would fail to notice the path that Sarutobi had decided on. The Sandaime Hokage was the very definition of that old ninja. He was an assassin, a puppet master, a tactical genius who hid himself under the guise of a kindly old man. He could smile at you to your face that morning, later that night order the complete eradication of your entire family, and then hold your hand through the funeral the very next day. The Hokage was a scary old bastard. There was no way in hell that the old man had forgotten when his student was last in the village. In fact, Jiraiya was fairly certain that Sarutobi still remembered exactly what the Sannin had eaten for lunch after they'd passed his bell test nearly 4 decades ago. In any case, the point was moot. His Hokage had asked him a question, and like an obedient subordinate he would put aside his personal feelings and answer the question to the best of his ability. About 4 years ago, Jiraiya sighed. After Minato gave his life to seal the Kyuubi, I had to leave. The pain of losing my student, it was just too much for me, I guess. I withdrew from the village and everything related to it. The Sannin hung his head in shame. I couldn't even bring myself to take care of my own godson. The Sandaime turned back to him, unconsciously running his hand across the scars his face. "Godson," he echoed in a faraway voice. Jiraiya sent him a puzzled look. "You know, Naruto, cute little kid with big blue eyes and whiskers on his cheeks." His teacher cringed. This was immediately noticed. "What's wrong? Did the kid do something bad?" The third's jaw dropped and his pipe clattered noisily to the desk. The two ninjas stared at each other with mirrored expressions of perplexed shock. Sarutobi recovered first. "Things have changed while you were away," he stated solemnly as he retrieved a thick manila folder from his desk. He released the seal binding the reports and slipped the document into Jiraiya's hands. The Toad Sage opened the folder. Inside appeared to be the dossier of a ninja. He began to examine the first page. It read: Name, Aboki Horo. Gender, male. Rank, Chunin. Age, 24, deceased. Cause of death, severe lacerations to the thoracic and abdominal area, resulting in massive, irreversible hemorrhaging. His face began to pale when he looked at the photos attached to the report. The ninja in question was laying face up in an alleyway surrounded by a pool of deep crimson liquid. Bits of mangled flesh and gore were plastered to the alley walls along with a liberal amount of kunai and shuriken. Deep claw-like gouges, eerily similar to those that now resided on the third's face, littered the man's legs and torso. The report detailed that the nin had finally died when his chest was ripped open. Massive hemorrhaging was an understatement. Jiraiya didn't even try to locate the deceased ninja's shredded heart, and still managed to find it with relative ease. Jiraiya had had enough. He may have been a ninja, but there were limits to what even he could stomach. He turned to the next page, and felt his blood run cold. The next page was practically identical to the first. The only thing that changed was the name of the person on the sheet. His eyes shot down to the bottom of the page. Age 10, deceased. Cause of death, blunt force decapitation. Blunt force decapitation, he thought in disbelief. What the fuck is that, and why was it used on a 10-year-old for Kami's sake? He looked at one of the photos and felt the bile rise in his throat. Oh, so that's blunt force decapitation. For a shinobi, death was something that came with the job. As academy students, they were taught that ninjas played 5 vital roles: assassin, mercenary, spy, saboteur, and thief. Out of these 5 duties, 2 of them were involved directly in act of taking a life. Assassinations, by definition, required that a ninja take the life of their target. Coincidentally, the act of being a mercenary entailed the full-scale slaughter of an opposing army. Bloody? Of course. Just? Perhaps. Sad? Nearly always. But in the end, as long as you got paid, it didn't really matter. That being said, Jiraiya was an excellent ninja. Even being a semi-competent ninja meant having a lot of innocent blood on your hands. When you were one of the legendary Sannin, let's just say that the silly carefree pervert had more than a few skeletons in his closet. Having fought in both the second and third great ninja wars made him no stranger to blood and death. However, the style of execution portrayed in these photos, they just didn't seem possible. Most of the kills he'd been exposed to were clean, quick, and efficient, exactly the way a veteran ninja was taught to operate. But these kills were entirely different. Flesh had been torn where it should have cut. Lethal strikes were constantly missed a hair's breadth, too perfect in their precision to count it off as lucky hits. In fact, a majority of the reports so far seemed to indicate that the attacker had prolonged its victim's demise, allowing them to escape and then hunting them down again, like the whole act was nothing more than a sadistic game of cat and mouse. Jiraiya turned to the next page and choked when he read the name. "Oh Kami, no," he whispered. Name, Hataki Kakashi, copy nin. Gender, male. Rank, ANBU captain. Age 18, deceased. Cause of death, singular, severe laceration spanning the length of the thoracic cavity, resulting in massive and irreversible hemorrhaging. A feeling of emptiness swept over him, forcing him to close the docket. How? He asked helplessly. Kakashi was an ANBU captain. How could he have died? His mentor gave him pained look before answering. Kakashi died protecting me, he said in a voice heavy with grief. He threw his body in front of an attack that was meant for me. His sacrifice allowed me to escape with ease. The third gestured to his face. He looked back at Sarutobi weakly. What in the hell could have done this? The old man's hand began to once again trail over his scars. After a long while he finally answered. Uzumaki Naruto. Chapter 2, Godson. Jiraiya's breath caught in his throat. He felt like he was going to throw up. Naruto? He echoed in a broken voice. My godson? The third nodded. Although his outward appearance remained stoic and cool, on the inside he could feel his heart breaking. His student was crying again, and the old man wanted to do nothing more than act like the fatherly figure that his student desperately needed. He knew he couldn't though. Right now he needed to be the Hokage. He had to be that old ninja, no matter how bad it felt to do so. But how? His student breathed. He's only 4. The professor ignored his question, a rather annoying habit that the old man had picked up at some point during the Sannin's absence. He calmly refilled his empty pipe with tobacco, another annoying habit that the old Hokage had picked up, lit it, and took in a deep lungful of harmful smoke. Only after several more drags on his pipe did Sarutobi finally feel inclined to answer his student. Let me tell you the whole story. As you know, 4 years ago the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Its power was beyond anything that we could have possibly imagined. With just a sweep of its tails it could level entire mountain ranges or raise a wall of water capable of swallowing a hidden village. Our ninja fought valiantly against the beast, knowing full well that their deaths would only buy you and Minato a few more seconds to finish the seal. The Hokage cringed. It was a massacre. The demon's unholy power cut through our ranks with an ease that suggested our shinobi were made of wet tissue paper. Its tail swung, killing dozens of men instantly. Our most devastating jutsu only served to agitate the great beast, reducing them to little more than beacons that focused the monster's rage upon the caster. We were helpless, utterly helpless before the unlimited power of the kitsune. Our only hope was to believe the yandere would somehow conjure up a miracle. He did, but only after the heaviest of prices. The fourth sacrificed not only his life, but also the life of his newborn son, condemning the babe to a life of loneliness and pain so that the village could survive. It worked. At the cost of his own soul, Minato's seal was able to imprison the mightiest of the Biju inside the weakest of containers. A baby boy. It was around this point you left. The Sandaime commented offhandedly. Jiraiya hung his head. Anyway, after you left many things happened at once. In light of your absence and your student's death, the council requested that I come out of retirement and once again take up the mantle of Hokage. He gestured to his robes. As you can clearly see, I accepted. Being the leader of the village in such a tremulous time was interesting to say the least. The village was in ruins, morale was low, missions were scarce, and of course Naruto, our baby Jinchuriki, needed a good home. With no one around to take care of him, the old man sent a pointed look at the downcast toad sage. I was forced to send him to an orphanage. Many of the citizens considered Naruto to be the Kyuubi, and during his first year of life my ANBU prevented no less than 20 assassination attempts on his life. The young boy developed at an astounding rate, being fully able to walk and talk when he was only 18 months old. For the villagers, this was proof that Naruto was in fact the Nine-Tails in disguise, and attempts on his life skyrocketed. His sensei sighed. Looking back on it now, I wish I had made just a little bit of time for the boy. He was completely alone in the world, denied any type of positive human interaction because of the demon living inside him. The old ninja trailed off. I should have been there for him. A tear fell from younger man's eye. He opened his mouth to proclaim how he was the one at fault, that little boy had been his responsibility, but his teacher quickly motioned for him to remain silent. The Hokage seemed to hesitate before continuing with the story. On his second birthday he was attacked by a mob of angry civilians. A look of rage crossed the Sanin's face, but the Sandaime didn't appear to have noticed. He was beaten, badly, before the ANBU guard had finally stepped in and put a stop to the mob. Naruto was unconscious for 5 days before he finally woke up. After that he was different. Only a few weeks later I received another report that he'd been attacked, but this time the attack had ended very differently. Out of the 20 people that had attacked him, none had survived. He slaughtered them all. Every single one of them had been killed by a 2-year-old boy. At first I couldn't believe what I was reading. How could a boy, who by all rights shouldn't even know what death is, be able to butcher nearly 24 people that were roughly 4 times his size? When the ANBU that was guarding him told me what had happened, I nearly threw up. The scared Hokage pulled a document from his desk. At roughly 1900 hours, the Jinchuriki known as Uzumaki Naruto was assaulted by no less than 20 citizens of the Hidden Leaf. I was going to intervene when I suddenly noticed something. The boy was laughing as the civilians beat him with pipes and bats. He almost seemed to be taking a perverse pleasure at being struck by blows that would have crippled a normal man, to say nothing of a child. Since boy didn't appear to be in any real danger, I decided to take careful note of the boy's actions. One of the men leaned over and said something inaudible to profusely bleeding yet still laughing child that abruptly silenced him. Killing intent unlike anything I'd ever felt exploded from the boy, slaying a few of the villagers on the spot and bringing the rest to a near catatonic state. Just before I lost consciousness, I was able to make out what appeared to be 3 flaming tails swinging behind his back. The scene I awoke to can't be aptly described by any words that I know. Pictures are enclosed within, however, Hokage-sama, I strongly advise you not to look at them. End report. Sarutobi set the paper on his desk and took a long drag from his pipe. I looked at those photos. He stated with a slight tremor in his voice. And Taka was right, I shouldn't have. The professor shook his head, as if this act would remove the memories clinging to his mind. Slowly, he turned back to Jiraiya. Even though his actions went way beyond disturbing, I figured that this might, in fact, be a good thing. Well, not exactly good per se. Perhaps acceptable would be the more accurate word to use. Yes, I found this to be acceptable. Naruto had only done what he had because he was trying to defend himself. He had to kill those people or else they would have killed him. At least that's what I had originally thought. Someone in ANBU leaked what Naruto had done to the general public, and then all hell broke loose. The civilian council demanded the boy's head in reparation for the people that he killed. The ninja council demanded that he be turned into a weapon to be used by the village. My advisors told me that I should just leave him in the forest, and claimed that he'd run away from the village sometime during the night. The general populace railed that he should stand trial for his actions. The Hokage massages his temples. Later that night, nearly 150 people, both ninja and civilian, band together in an attempt to finish what the Yondaime started and began to march towards Naruto's apartment. I sent one of my most loyal ANBU to rescue the boy before the angry mob found him. Sarutobi paused. He was later found inside Naruto's apartment with his head and arms torn off. The angle of the attack suggested that his opponent was only 3 feet tall. A dark look spread across the old man's face. No one was spared, no one escaped. 6 of the ninja in attendance that night were members of ANBU Black Ops. Again the Hokage paused. They were fighting a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old slaughtered them like animals. After that, nobody ever tried to kill Naruto again. But as the months went on, people were still turning up dead. It was obvious that our little Jinchuriki was the killer. Only he would be able to achieve the necessary amount of carnage in order to replicate these kills. I summoned him to the tower in order to question him about these murders. When I asked him if he knew anything about it, he laughed hysterically, saying, "Of course I know about the murders, you silly old ninja. I did them." Naturally, this shocked me. I knew that Naruto was most likely behind the murders, but to hear a 3-year-old boy proclaim in such a proud voice that he'd been mercilessly killing people for the past year was just. The Sandaime trailed off. I asked him why he'd been killing so many people. To this he'd happily replied, "The big fox told me that I needed to eat better." Now I was floored. How was I supposed to act after finding out that the murderer who roamed the streets of Konoha was actually a psychotic cannibalistic child? I wanted to arrest him, but I knew that would only provoke the boy's wrath. I'm fairly confident if combat between me and the little Jinchuriki ensued, the resulting battle would have cost far more lives than simply allowing him to continue feeding. I let him go, telling him that he would be arrested if he was caught doing this again. He just smiled brightly and promised to stop. The killings persisted. For the next year, the village simply tried to pretend that the murders and Naruto didn't exist. People went out of their way to avoid him, hoping that he would allow them to live if they simply left him in peace. Only afterwards did we realize that isolating him was probably the worst thing we could have done. They say hindsight is 20/20. They are very wise. In an effort to appease the beast, we forgot one very important detail. It had 2 faces. It was the Kitsune, Lord and Master of Biju, the greatest of the 9, the embodiment of power and hatred, but it was also Naruto, a scared and lonely little boy wondering why people ran in terror at the sight of him. In effect, we left an unstable little boy all alone with only a malevolent, trickster fox for companionship. The demon twisted his mind, poisoning him with whispered lies and promises of happiness. Over the next year the 2 personas merged, the end result being a cruel, hateful, incredibly dangerous creature that lived for, and loved only itself. His next birthday marked the darkest day in Konoha's history following the Kyuubi's initial attack 4 years ago. The village was holding a service of remembrance in the local temple for the thousands that had died when Ninetales attacked. I was leading a prayer when a massive wave of killing intent was suddenly leveled on the crowd. Naruto was there. The Hokage shivered, his hand unintentionally moving to stroke his scars. The rage burning in his eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. He was furious that his villagers would rejoice in the demon's defeat, mocking the creature that he considered to be his closest friend. He attacked. The demon had given him claws and fangs sharper than any blade, and the civilians around him were quickly cut down. Behind it, 4 flaming tails lashed out like wrecking balls, crushing any that managed to slip past him. The shinobi tried to drive the beast back, but it was far too strong. In short, we were massacred. Whether by conscious decision or sheer dumb luck, the beast had managed to catch us when we were weakest. Using the demon's chakra had had a crippling effect on the people's morale. The situation was entirely too similar to one 4 years ago. Many veteran ninja panicked and ran when they saw that they would once again have to face the monster that haunted their nightmares. It had attacked in a crowded area, and because it was so small, the ninja couldn't the demon until it was too late. Engaging the beast at long range, as well as using our most powerful techniques, was impossible. It used the crowd as shield, forcing our ninja to be careful so that they didn't accidentally kill a civilian by mistake. The demon had no such constraint, quite the opposite really. With every sweep of its claws it managed to bring down another batch of people. It barely even had to work at it. Amidst the chaos, the beast must have managed to work its way to front crowd, because the next thing I knew was that I was being thrown to the side by Kakashi. The Hokage's voice began to tremble with rage. It killed him. That thing gutted one of my best ninja. The enraged Sandaime slammed his fists on the desk. He was laughing when he did it. Jiraiya remained silent. We fought, and just like I predicted the year before, it was a bloodbath. The little bastard lured me into the crowd and then ambushed me in the confusion. That's when he gave me these. The old man growled, tapping his scars with the stem of his pipe. He maneuvered me into situations that forced me to kill my subjects in order to dodge his attacks. At one point I was forced to cut through a little girl in order to deflect a lethal strike aimed at my heart. The look of fear and pain on her face as her beloved Hokage-sama, Sarutobi, snarled, was forced to stab her in order to prolong his own wretched life is something that will be forever burned into my mind. After nearly half an hour, me, as well as several Uchihas, were able to bring the creature down. The Uchiha were able to use their Sharingans partially suppress the shield of demonic chakra long enough for me to plunge a kunai into Naruto's head. The Toad Hermit flinched at this, but his teacher took no notice. The wound healed almost instantly. A Hyuga was brought to the boy, and his vital signs were confirmed. Somehow the boy was still alive. Without ceremony, an Anbu cut off his head, and we watched in mute horror as it reattached itself his neck. No matter what we tried, the thing wouldn't die. The only thing we could do was suppress his chakra and pray that he doesn't wake up until we figure out how to kill him. At this moment, Naruto is in a cell deep beneath the tower. We covered him with so many chakra suppression seals that he should have remained in a comatose state for the rest of his life. Instead, he began to wake up yesterday. This is why I've called you back. The old man let this sink in. Tears began to run down the Sanin's painted cheeks. How could this have happened? He promised Minato that he would be there for his son, promised that he would protect the thing that his student had treasured more than life itself. But he didn't. He lied. He ran away from his problems like a coward, breaking his final promise to a dying man because he was too sad and afraid to do his duty. Now look at what his failures had wrought. The Kopinin was gone, his godson was eating people, the whole of Konoha lived in fear, and thousands of innocent people were dead. All of this could have been avoided if he'd simply been a little stronger. This is my fault, he whispered. You're right, it is. Sarutobi spat, his voice like acid. Jiraiya recoiled at the venomous words. The boy was your responsibility, and yet you did nothing. You were the one who abandoned him. You were the one who left him in darkness. You were the one who wasn't there when he needed you the most. The Sannin wished for death at this point. But the Hokage sighed, you were the one who came back for him. You can't give in to despair just yet, Jiraiya. Your godson still needs you. The Toad Sage's head shot up. What do you mean? The anger vanished from Sarutobi's face and was replaced with that look, the keen calculating smirk that meant you were now dealing with that old ninja. Who was there for him when Naruto was all alone? Jiraiya's head began to bow again. No one. You're wrong, the old man simply stated. Now answer the question, who was there for him when Naruto was all alone? The Sanin's eyes widened. The Kyuubi. Correct. Now, what does Naruto love more than anything else? The Kyuubi, he repeated. Correct again. My, you're getting rather good at this. Jiraiya frowned, but of course, it was ignored. Final question. Who sealed the Kyuubi into Naruto? Minato. His sensei shook his head. And me? The old man grinned. Exactly. He pulled out a sheet of paper and handed it to his student. I am assigning you an S-rank mission. It involves taking Naruto out of Konoha until you deem him fit to re-enter society at large. While in the field, you are to humanize him as well as train him in the ninja arts. Should you succeed, the village of the Hidden Leaf will be in control of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, stronger even than the Yellow Flash. Should you fail, you will most likely be torn apart and eaten, and Konoha will lose yet another ninja to the Kyuubi's talents. A small smile crossed the Sanin's face as his teacher finished drawing up the paperwork. Thank you, sensei. I'm so sorry for everything. Sarutobi filed the paperwork away and turned to look at his pupil. You created a hell of a mess when you left Jiraiya. Now you're going to fix it. With that, he stood up and walked over to Jiraiya. There are seals on the prison to prevent anyone other than me from shining inside. Hold on tight. Jiraiya took hold of the older man's arm and the two vanished in a swirl of leaves. Both men reappeared in dark room, the only source of light being a few flickering candles. In the darkness, the Toad Sannin could vaguely make out the shape of a cross suspended nearly 50 feet in the air by thick steel chains. There was a figure shackled to the cross that appeared to be either sleeping or unconscious. Wake up, Naruto! The Hokage called out. I have someone I want you to meet. Two orbs of ruby light flared into existence, the ambient light from them casting a hellish glare on the young boy's grinning face. Sarutobi. A happy childish voice replied. His grin became psychotic and the light from his eyes intensified. The guttural voice he spoke and next radiated hatred and power. Are we going to play again, old man? Chapter 3 Ninja. The silence was deafening. For a long time both parties remained unspeaking, they simply studied each other. Jiraiya's eyes hardened when they locked with the glowing pinpricks of scarlet light. This monster was not his godson. They say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. His teacher was right, they are very wise. The Toad Sage could see many things within the creature's eyes, its hatred, its power, and above all else, its inextinguishable rage. It may have worn the mask of a cute innocent child, but that was all it was, a mask. Those maelstroms of molten crimson crushed the last kernel of doubt in the Sanin's mind. This was the Kyuubi. The stillness was broken by saccharine voice of the demon. Sarutobi, he whined, when are you gonna let me down? I promise I'll be a good boy. The Hokage's stern visage remained unchanged. Come on, old man, let me down. The boy pleaded mockingly. It's so boring up here, and besides, the maniacal grin returned. I'm feeling a little hungry. The boy erupted into insane laughter at this comment, as though he just told the funniest joke in the world. His laughter was abruptly cut off by a startled gurgle, and something warm and wet began to leak from his still open mouth. Jiraiya glanced nonchalantly to the side, taking note of his sensei's still extended arm. The old man let it fall to his side before calmly addressing the temporarily muzzled demon child. I have 499 more kunai sealed into the sleeves of my robe, demon. The Hokage idly commented as he retrieved another blade. We can do this all day long if you wish. The Jinchuriki wheezed something indistinct around the kunai in his mouth. I beg your pardon? Sarutobi cupped a hand to his ear. A sound of spitting was heard, followed shortly thereafter by the clatter of steel on stone. This time the voice was neither childish nor demonic, it was composed and amused. I said, you say you want to talk, but then you go around throwing knives in my mouth. Seems kind of backwards to me. Perhaps this is a negotiating technique that all kages use. Human politics is fascinating. His prattle was cut off by yet another throwing knife. 498. The Sandame deadpanned, drawing another kunai. Can I try? The third student asked in a detached manner. Sarutobi smirked at this. At least now the Toad Sage understood what this thing was. We need it to like you, Jiraiya. The Sannin was about to reply when a clang echoed through the room, signifying that the boy could speak once again. Although it only shot the old man an irate look, the fire in its eyes indicated that the beast was seething. Again the child stared at them. What did you want to talk about? He gritted out through clenched teeth. The Hokage smiled. I wanted you to meet someone. Naruto, this is Jiraiya, your godfather. The other man wished his teacher hadn't done that. Even though the little Jinchuriki was incapacitated for the moment, very soon he would have to take the boy out into the field, and believe it or not, Jiraiya didn't feel like being eaten by his student's son. He waited for the boy to explode at him. Nothing happened. The vermilion discs blinked in confusion. And he could almost picture the young boy motioning for his sensei to continue. That old ninja look crossed his mentor's face, and he had to stifle a groan. Manipulative old bastard. Naruto. How do you feel about your godfather? The orbs narrowed in confusion before widening in what appeared to be horror. He's a bad man who left me all alone with only a demon gak. Sungava Bith. 497. A kunai pinged to the floor. I don't care about him one way or the other. Ask me how I feel about you, old man. The Sandaime disregarded the last part and continued to question the child. Why don't you hate him for what he did? Jiraiya shot his teacher a look. Was the old man trying to get him killed or something? What are you talking about, old man? The demon vessel sounded genuinely confused. His eyes flicked towards his godfather. That guy never did anything to me. In fact, I've never seen him before in my life. Does it make you angry that he's a bad man who left you all alone with only a demon for companionship? Of course not. If he was around more, I probably would have never met the Kyuubi. The old man's smirk broadened. So would you kill him if you were presented with the opportunity to do so? The Sandaime threw his hands up in air in disbelief. The old man was trying to kill him. Soft laughter floated through the darkness. It seems like your companion would rather you not speak about him, Sarutobi. Perhaps I would or perhaps I wouldn't, though I can safely say he wouldn't be my first choice. No, that honor is all yours, old man. His eyes turned to Jiraiya. You J something. If you get me down, I'll kill the old guy for you. A kunai whizzed through the air, stopping with an abrupt click. Hee, caught IH this time, ya stupidao. Damn it! A second kunai sailed into his neck, causing the one clenched in his teeth to fall to the ground. What the hell do I look like to you, a dartboard? Most dartboards I've encountered aren't this annoying. The third replied as he readied another kunai. His student's hand caught his wrist in mid-throw. Don't piss him off, the hermit advised. It'll just draw out the demon's chakra quicker. Sarutobi gave the man a slight nod and lowered the knife. A metallic chime relayed that yet another kunai had been removed from the restrained Jinchuriki. You know, J something, I'm starting to like you more and more, he trailed off. Why'd you come back? If you brought me a present for my birthday, you can still give it to me now. J something gave his godson a flat look. No present, eh? Cheap bastard. Sarutobi's hand inched towards his kunai, and the child growled. So why are you here? What does the old schemer want out of you? Are you gonna be the one to kill me? Are you gonna shower me with love and affection until I find the inner goodness buried within my tortured heart? Perhaps you're just here to check up on your demon-spawned godson and be done with it? Whatever your reason for being here, it makes no difference to me. As soon as these seals give out, I'm gonna show you, the old man, and the entire village just how scary I can be. Wisps of crimson chakra began to leak out of the overtaxed suppression seals. A wicked sneer formed on Naruto's face. Believe it! The instant that the demonic energy began to waft from the seals, the Hokage began to weave hand seals. He'd nearly finished when Jiraiya's hand unexpectedly lashed out and clamped around his hands, canceling the nearly complete jutsu. The old man sent his student a frantic look. He was going to get both of them killed. However, the Sandaime's anxiety evaporated when he saw the hard look in the Sanin's eyes. He let go of his sensei's hands and began to walk towards his enraged godson, fearless in the presence of the Biju's wrath. He came to a stop before the boy, visibly trembling as waves of killing intent began to descend on him. The sage steeled himself. What he was about to do would either save his life, or get him killed. You're wrong. Naruto looked at him, fangs bared and tiny muscles straining at the manacles that prevented him from killing his prey. What the man said next stopped his movements dead. I'm here to kill with you. Nobody moved. Sarutobi barely even breathed. He hoped his student had a plan, because if he didn't, this was going to get very messy very quickly. The child's snarl morphed into a grin, the bloodlust shining clearly in his glowing eyes. Good. He purred darkly. Get me down from here so I can kill the old man. Why? Naruto looked at him like he was insane. He opened his mouth to speak but was instantly cut off by his godfather. I mean, beside the fact that you hate him. That doesn't really mean much because you hate everyone. The sage chuckled softly. The blonde replied without hesitating, because he's strong enough to best me. I have to kill him. Killing him will validate my existence. The Sannin laughed at the Jinchuriki's response and gestured to the third Hokage. Him. He snickered before once again breaking down into laughter. You can't be serious. Look at him, he's like 95. Why on earth would you possibly want to fight a washed-up old ninja like him? What pride is there in killing a sickly old man? Sarutobi winced. That was probably payback for the "do you want to kill him" question. The boy seemed to ponder his godfather's words, and he came to the grudging realization that he was right. The old man was powerful, no question about that, but he'd been inactive for nearly 20 years, dulling his skills and slowing his reflexes. What pride was there in killing a sickly old man? More like, what fun was there in killing a sickly old man? Naruto focused his gaze on the Hokage. Even in the dim light he could clearly make out the jagged lines that ran the length of the man's face. He'd already managed to hit him once, it wasn't even that difficult. The Jinchuriki was snapped out of his musings by the Toad Sannin's voice. Do you see what I'm getting at, kid? The Sandaime is strong, but he's far from being the biggest fish in the sea. Hell, I bet I could probably teach him a thing or two. The demon boy shifted his gaze to Jiraiya. You! He spat. How can you possibly be stronger than him? He's the Hokage. I've never even heard of you. Jiraiya held up his hands in a defensive gesture. Easy, Naruto. I can assure you that I'm a very competent ninja. The blonde raised an eyebrow at the man below him. Kmoon. The Toad Sage grinned. I did a good enough job at sealing the fox in you, didn't I? The boy's eyes shot up in surprise. You're the one who sealed the Kyuubi inside me. Jiraiya nodded. A wide range of emotions flew across the boy's face. Confusion, disbelief, contemplation, exasperation, and finally something very human. Gratitude. He was quiet for a long while. The two simply looked at each other. This man saved him from the loneliness. He'd left him alone, but had given him his dearest friend before he went. He wasn't there to protect him when he needed it, but that didn't matter because he'd given him the power necessary to protect himself. This man had given him the greatest treasure in the world, a nine-tailed guardian angel. The boy shut his eyes and uttered something that he'd never said before. Thank you? His godfather smiled softly but said nothing, figuring that it was better to remain silent than risk saying something stupid and invoke the demon's temper. For a long while either party spoke, the two ninja opting to simply bask in their good fortune for the time being. With any luck, the god who was smiling down on them would continue to do so. It was Naruto who broke the peaceful atmosphere. Did you mean it? Did you mean what you said about killing with me? The Sannin gave him a serious look. That depends. Are you going to continue attacking innocents? The boy snarled and his eyes began to blaze. It seemed that Jiraiya's luck had run out. That depends. He roared back. Are they going to continue disrespecting me? A very Kyuubi-like grin spread across the hermit's face. Kid, when I'm done with you, nobody's going to disrespect you. Naruto mimicked the look on his godfather's face until something dawned on him. What do you mean by, when I'm done with you? The Jinchuriki asked in a guarded voice. Fuck. It's okay though. It's just like lying my way out of a bathhouse, only instead of getting beaten by half-naked women, your head gets torn off. No pressure, super pervert. I'm going to train you to be a ninja, of course. Idiot. The young boy looked murderous. Red chakra began to whip around his body, and the wooden structure holding him aloft was beginning to splinter. Listen to what I'm saying. The sage roared over the din that the chakra storm created. The whirlwind of demonic energy lessened only slightly. I won't become a puppet for the village, he roared. I won't let them control me. The Sannin leapt to the boy, and the cross creaked dangerously under strain of his weight. He got nose to nose with the furious child, an act that caused the corruptive energy to burn the skin on his face. A look of surprise crossed Naruto's face, watching in awe as the older man apparently tried to kill himself. Petulant child, look at yourself. You think yourself all-powerful because of the demon caged within you, you fool. You rant and rave about honoring the Kyuubi's desires, about the amount of respect you have for the kitsune, but when I offer you the power and death that being a ninja can bring, you throw it back in my face and claim that you won't be a puppet for the village. Look around you. Look at where you are. You're already a slave to the village, but you're so blinded by your hatred that you can't even see it. Blood began to pour from Jiraiya's mouth due to the extended exposure to the Nine-Tails chakra. He spat the coppery liquid to the ground and continued to yell. You're a demon! I'm a ninja! When you murder nearly 1,000 people in cold blood, they lock you in here. When I murder nearly 1,000 people in cold blood, they give me a fucking medal and tell me to do it again. The man coughed, causing more blood to fly from his mouth. Still he persisted. The Nine-Tails had its pride, but it wasn't insufferable like yours. At least it wasn't deaf to reason. You refused to become a ninja on principle. Refuse your most logical option because of your deplorable pride. Wake up, kid, the fox is a ninja. It kills, it tricks, it manipulates, it steals, and it destroys. That is what a ninja truly is, and that is what you're throwing away. The tornado of ruby mist began to dissipate, leaving a barley-conscious toad standing forehead to forehead with the most dangerous creature to ever walk the streets of Konoha. The Sannin leaned back dizzily and poked his forehead. What's it going to be, kid? The young boy gaped like a fish at his godfather's words. Everything that the man said had been true. He was about to speak when a sudden resounding crack was heard. His restraints gave way and he and Jiraiya fell to the floor amidst a cascade of timbers. From his place at the opposite side of the cell, Sarutobi shot forward. The amount of speed he was displaying would have been surprising for a shinobi half his age. He crossed the room in the blink of an eye, standing his ground before the small boy that was kneeling over his unmoving student. Naruto looked up at the Sandaime, uncertainty clear on his face. Is he right, old man? Am I being an idiot? Only years of experience kept the old ninja's guard from dropping. As much as Sarutobi hated the creature, at the moment he couldn't bring himself to look past the beast's childish disguise. I can't answer that, he simply stated. You wouldn't listen to me anyway. The demon stared intently at his godfather's peaceful face, as though if he stared at it long enough he would find his answer. Part of him still wanted to kill the old man for the things he'd said about the fox, while another part of him wanted to thank the man for his insights about the demon. Simply put, Naruto was conflicted. The Sannin's words echoed in his mind. You're a demon. I'm a ninja. When you murder nearly 1,000 people in cold blood, they lock you in here. When I murder nearly 1,000 people in cold blood, they give me a fucking medal and tell me to do it again. The blonde's head snapped up and he looked to the old ninja. Do you think that you'd die if we fought again? Sarutobi was about to do something that he had never done before and would never do again, admit weakness. Yes, I would probably die. Your godfather was right when he said that there was no pride in fighting me. The only reason I was able to last as long as I did before was because I had allies that could suppress your chakra shield. In a fair fight you would win. For a long time the boy sat over an unmoving Jiraiya, going over what the Hokage had said. If even the Hokage was no match for him, who was going to fight? However, if he was able to do the impossible, swallow his pride, and become a ninja, then perhaps he would be able to find an opponent worthy of his claws. Or maybe, a grin spread across his face at the new thought, maybe there would be a war. When he thought about it like that, being a ninja didn't seem so bad. Naruto looked up at Sarutobi. I am not your puppet, old man, and I will not address you as Hokage-sama. If you ever forget this, I'll cut you down without hesitation. Konoha is the one on the short leash around here, not me. A barely visible that old ninja smirk pulled at the edge of his lip. He trained his features before the boy noticed. That is fine, Naruto. As long as you only kill the enemy, I believe we will be able to get along just fine. The boy looked away from the stoic features of the old man and ground his teeth in rage. I'm not submitting. I'm doing what the fox would want. I'm going to kill people and no one will care. I will find someone worthy of facing me. I will validate my existence. A mischievous smirk crossed his features. And after I'm done with this place, I can always burn it to the ground. The old man crouched in front of the boy and spoke to him in a voice that suggested he had a knife to his throat. Naruto, to get us out of here I'm going to have to touch you. If you kill me, you will never be able to escape. Now, may I touch you, Naruto? The child once again grit his teeth in anger. Do it. Although the Jinchuriki bristled under Sarutobi's touch, he didn't attack. No matter how much he wanted to. The three disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Nearly 3 days later, Jiraiya awoke to a repetitive beeping noise. He squinted against the harsh light, and slowly turned his head towards the sound of breathing in front of him. His sensei stared back at him, pipe in hand. If this is heaven, I'm going to be very pissed off, he proclaimed in voice that implied there was no room for argument. I've been awake for nearly 10 seconds now, and not a single naked woman has fallen from the sky. The Hokage breathed out another stream of smoke before responding. I would tend to agree with you on that. Very disappointing. A small smile played at his lips. The Sannin reflected his mentor's look. You shouldn't smoke in the hospital, he chided. You shouldn't headbutt demons, the older man replied. Jiraiya chuckled softly. Speaking of which, where is the little bastard anyway? Sarutobi smirked. He's at the local penitentiary, eating the inmates on death row. His student laughed, slowly allowing his eyes to slide shut. Jiraiya, said man, looked up. How did you know all of those things you told Naruto about the fox? The toad sage snickered. I figured that I was going to die anyway, so at that point I was just pulling things out of my ass. And with that, the injured man fell asleep. The Hokage stared at the unconscious man with eyes as wide as dinner plates. The pipe slid from his gaping jaw and clattered to the floor. Son of a. Chapter 4 Progress. The relationship that grew between the pair in those first few months was interesting to say the very least. Though the Sannin was stronger, smarter, faster, and had nearly 4 decades more experience than the boy did, there was no question that Naruto was the position of dominance for the duration of their trip. The simple fact of the matter was that the child had access to the most powerful, and probably the most intelligent, being ever to roam the earth. Being a shinobi for 40 years was almost unheard of. Considering that the life expectancy of a normal ninja averaged somewhere between 10 and 15 years, 40 years of service was nothing short of miraculous. However, this feat was laughable when compared with the eons that the kitsune had been alive for. If Sarutobi, a mortal man, was capable of becoming that old ninja in only 60 years, then what did that make the fox? The demon had lived for countless millennia. It had seen the ancestors of man. It watched them change from cave-dwelling beasts into sentient life forms. It watched as they began to use tools, watched as they began to climb the food chain, watched as they reached the top of that chain, and watched as they, again, began to change. It saw empires rise and fall. It saw times of great war and times of great peace. Times of progression and times of regression. It had watched them discover and invent. Watched when they created giant steel birds that could traverse the stars, and watched when they created staffs of iron that spit fire and thunder at their enemies. It watched as they destroyed themselves, watched unflinchingly as the world was obliterated by rays of light that rained down from the heavens. And then it watched as the little cave beast crawled from the muck once again. Comparing that old ninja or the toad sage to that old demon was like comparing a candle to the sun, and the Sannin was quickly discovering that the line between the prisoner and the jailer was practically non-existent. For all intensive purposes, Naruto was the Kyuubi. The boy just hadn't fully unlocked the demon's power yet. In reality, he only had a fraction of its power and knowledge, and the boy knew it. It angered him greatly. He may have looked young, but that didn't equate to him being naive. Naruto hadn't been tricked by the crazy old hermit into thinking the fox was a ninja. The very idea was insane. But still, he would go along with it. He'd play the part of the reluctant, yet obedient, puppet demon until he no longer had any need for the village. Then, and only then, would he show them the heavy price to be paid for daring to dishonor the nine-tailed king. That was the real reason why he'd grudgingly accepted his godfather's offer to train him as a shinobi. He needed to become strong so that he could bring honor to the Kyuubi's name. Even if that meant becoming a ninja. And so, for the first year of his godson's training, Jiraiya was forced to walk a razor's edge lest he anger the beast. Although the boy had agreed to become a ninja, he never said anything about his teacher still being alive when the training was finished. He fought the Sannin Fang and Talon to avoid learning even the academy basics. After traveling for a week through Fire County, Naruto was ready to choke the proverbial bitch. The boy had already learned several things in short time away from the village. None of them were useful. One such tidbit was that, surprise surprise, the village hidden in the leaves was in fact surrounded by forests. Shocking. These forests that lined the road were pretty to look at, for maybe the first 3 hours. So after the first 3 days of traveling this way, the demon vessel was beginning to give serious consideration towards making Fire Country live up to its name. Another thing that the boy had learned was that he and his sensei shared absolutely nothing in common. So what do you think of toads? The older man wiggled his eyebrows deviously. Why the hell is he asking me this? Toads are kind of weird, replied the confused Jinchuriki. His teacher's shoulders sagged. Oh. After about 5 more minutes. You want to go hunting with me? Naruto grinned as he pointed to a small furry thing scuttling up a tree. I'll give you some even if I'm the one who catches it. Jiraiya rummaged through his pack, pulling out a small plastic bag. I've got some jerky if you're hungry. The boy stared at the plastic bag for a few seconds before sighing. No, that's fine. The rest of the day passed in silence. Wonderfully, infuriating silence. As did the next day. And the day after that. The worst part about this was that the back of the Toad Sanin's vest was even more boring than the endless sea of trees. Today marked the 1-week anniversary of the pair's leave. It too passed in silence. Hence the choking of the proverbial bitch. Naruto slowly extended his talons. Naruto. What? I'm sensing that you're getting bored. Yes. That would be a fairly accurate description of how I feel right now. A faint click announced that the boy's claws had locked into place. How about I show you some of the basics? That sounds very pleasant. His sensei turned to him. Can you put your claws away? Yes. Nothing happened. Jiraiya groaned in annoyance. Will you put your claws away? Yes. With a sharp click his claws retracted and the hermit relaxed his posture. They began to move into the forest, coming to an abrupt, and seemingly random, stop a short time later. To Naruto, this place didn't look like anything special. They just stood a few 100 feet away from the road, surrounded on all sides by trees. The sage turned back to the budding ninja. Okay, let's begin with basic taijutsu and then after a while we can move on to the proper way to throw kunai and shuriken. Maybe after a few months I can begin to teach you a few low-level ninjutsu. Jiraiya turned to his protege and smiled. Any questions? After a few months, a wide-eyed Naruto shouted. Of course. The Sannin simply replied. How long did you think it took? A few hours. The only sound that answered him was a loud metallic click. The hermit eyed the razor-sharp claws that were now pointed in his direction. Huh. I guess the old man was trying to kill me. Believe it or not, the little demon child didn't succeed in the task of killing his godfather. Ironically, it was the man's perversion that saved him, and not his skills as a legendary Sannin. Years of peeping on spas and bathhouses in order to gather research had caused the super pervert to develop a wide array of stealth-related skills. When the angry Jinchuriki had attacked him, he'd used Kawarimi to get out of the boy's striking distance, and then used a Doton Jutsu to hide underground until Naruto got bored. After the boy had had a day to cool off, the Toad Sage tried once again to teach the boy the basics. In short, he was awful. Not a single shuriken had managed to hit anywhere near the target tree and more than half of the kunai thrown had ended up striking back end first, causing little or no damage to the tree. At least they started out being ineffective. As the boy grew angrier and angrier, the butt of the kunai wound up being more lethal than the blade. The first time Naruto had used red chakra to enhance his throw, the tree had been blown completely in half, along with the next 30 trees behind it. For the boy's godfather it was both horrifying and comical. Horrifying that the boy would work himself up to the point where he'd use the Kyuubi's chakra over a simple training exercise, and comical because, in spite of all the damage he'd caused, the boy had still managed to miss the target tree. His sensei had stepped in and stopped the exercise when the demonic energy began to take the shape of a fox around the boy. The Sannin hoped that the simple act wouldn't offend the Jinchuriki to the point where it would push Naruto into the one-tailed transformation. To his great surprise and relief, the boy had stopped hurling the steel projectiles. When he saw Naruto's face, his eyes widened in surprise. However, the man quickly schooled his features, not wanting to evoke the demon's wrath. The expression he'd seen on the boy's face was what had shocked him so much. His student was sad. For a normal student, this kind of thing happened often. They would fail, become mad, become discouraged, and ultimately would try again. But that was just it. Naruto wasn't a normal student. Jiraiya often had to remind himself that he was training a young demon on this trip, not a young boy, even though the two were practically indistinguishable. At least that was what the sage had originally thought. In spite of all the boy's boasting and preening, in spite of the fact that he could kill his sensei at a moment's notice, and in spite of the horrific body count hanging over his head, part of Naruto was still a 4-year-old boy. He was dangerous and hateful, but at heart he was just a child. So Jiraiya had tried to comfort the boy, saying that nobody ever started out good and that he'd been even worse when he was first learning to throw kunai and shuriken. The hermit had been rewarded for his efforts by the boy's razor-sharp talons tearing across his face. His student was livid that the man would even think of talking down to him. The little Jinchuriki made it very clear that if he was ever disrespected like this again, the Toad Sannin would die. His teacher was only able to nod due to the bandages that he was pressing against his cheek. As the boy walked off into the forest, his godfather smirked under the gauze. If anyone else had made such an error, they would have been decapitated. For some reason, he was special. However, the Sannin knew that the boy would make good on his promise to kill him if he ever slipped up like that again. So they continued to travel, stopping to train when Naruto began to get bored, violent, or at the worst of times, both. Jiraiya had begun to train him in taijutsu, a notion that seemed inherently suicidal considering that the words non-lethal and friendly spar meant absolutely to the sadistic Jinchuriki. This was promptly remedied by the ever-useful shadow clone technique. However, the clones were quickly destroyed, and the friendly training spars quickly evolved into life-or-death combat between the sage and his pupil. The pair had nearly killed each other dozens of times within the first year of the training. At one point, the Toad Sannin hadn't been fast enough to totally avoid his student's claws, resulting in his jugular vein being torn open. Somehow he'd managed to cauterize the wound, buying him enough time to reach a town that was a few hours away. Again the boy had surprised him. Jiraiya had been absolutely sure that his godson would go for the kill, but thankfully the boy had done nothing. He simply said, "I'll wait here for 2 weeks. If you don't return by then I'll assume that you died. Better hurry too, you don't look too good." Of course, similar things had happened to the blonde Jinchuriki. His teacher had used one of his father's techniques on him. The Rasengan. Jiraiya didn't really know how to feel after the deadly chakra orb had drilled through his student's head. The whole situation was so saturated with poetic justice and irony and what have you, that it left the older of the pair feeling very confused and more than slightly nauseous. He just finished what the Yondaime started, an act that would have appalled Minato if he were still alive, by killing the beast, who was really Naruto, who thought he was the Kyuubi, with his father's signature technique. The situation was wrong on so many levels. Of course, a simple beheading wasn't nearly enough to put the demon child down, so his teacher didn't really feel the need to trouble himself with the condition of his headless student. Another very strange thing to think about. Superscript 1. Naruto's skull reformed with a wet crack, and he began to turn back towards his godfather. The man was just looking back at him with a slightly amused expression written on his face. The child's anger quickly turned into excitement. "That was awesome!" he shouted, retracting his claws as he ran towards his teacher. Jiraiya grinned. The boy rarely showed enthusiasm for his training, so on the rare occasions that he did, his teacher was always sure to utilize it. "You like that, eh?" the man stated disinterestedly as a second delphinium orb bloomed to life in his hand. "It's called the—" "You took my head clean off," the boy interrupted, continuing to bounce around his teacher's feet. "What a great fight. I mean, you've killed me before, but that time was amazing. I was almost sure that I would be able to cut you in half on that swing, but you pulled that victory out of nowhere." He mimicked, looking thoughtful. "Have you been holding back on me, Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto teased. The man deflated and his Rasengan flickered out rather anticlimactically. "You would think that being decapitated was awesome." He pouted. "Oh, come on, Jiraiya," his student whined. "You won, so you can't be sad. Besides, there's no such thing as a sore winner." The blonde looked thoughtful. "Is there?" The Sannin stared at the boy blankly. He hated it when his godson screwed with him. Naruto's voice stopped him when he began to walk away. "Good kill." The man stopped, looking back at his young charge. "What was that blue ball you used?" It packed quite a bit of bite to it. Jiraiya formed another Rasengan as he began to speak. It's called the Rasengan, an A-rank original jutsu created by the 4th Hokage. He held it out so Naruto could have a closer look. It's chakra manipulation in its purest form, no hand signs required. That pissed off the Uchiha clan to no end. He chuckled at the memory. I can teach it to you sometime if you want. No thanks. I don't need it. His teacher sighed. I thought you wanted to get powerful. You're not going to be a very good ninja if you keep refusing to learn when I try to teach you. I understand that you don't want to be controlled, trust me, I get it, but you're just being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn. Naruto sent him an indignant look. Be happy I'm here. His teacher moved to speak, but the boy cut him off. Jiraiya, what does the Rasengan do? It felt like being hit with a really powerful drill. Massive damage to a small area, in other words an assassination jutsu. He pointed at a nearby tree. Go hit that with your Rasengan. But... do it! His sensei sighed but did as he was told. The Rasengan connected with the trunk of the tree, effortlessly boring through the solid bark and coming out the other side. After the ball had disappeared, Jiraiya looked at him. See that tree there? The blonde pointed at another tree. His teacher nodded. Naruto flashed out of existence, and the tree that he'd pointed to exploded violently, propelling a storm of wooden shrapnel high into the air. The boy was standing in front of the blackened stump, demonic chakra licking up and down the length of his claws. Chunks of smoldering lumber rained down on the clearing as the demon child turned back to Jiraiya. I'll take my claws over your jutsu any day. X. For both the second and third year, that had been Naruto's prevailing attitude. Both years had been spent trying to teach the stubborn demon child ninjutsu and genjutsu. The boy had outright refused to learn anything for the first year. However, during that year the boy had grown considerably more tolerant of his teacher, even going so far as to drop the sarcastic tone when he addressed him as Jiraiya-sensei. The Sannin was willing to hazard a guess that Naruto's improved demeanor had something to do with the daily spars that they had. It seemed that the blonde's respect for him stemmed from the man managing to survive their gruesome battles. When the sage had beaten him with a surprise Rasengan, his godson had finally recognized him as a worthy opponent. After that, every time the demon child was bested by his teacher, the man's standing increased. Still, Jiraiya often found himself on the wrong end of his godson's claws for saying something that angered the boy. But even so, at least he was making progress. Having learned next to nothing in the previous year, the Toad Hermit was forced to take drastic measures to ensure that this year his student would learn ninjutsu and genjutsu. In other words, bribery. For 3 weeks Naruto raised hell on the local bandit population in southern Rice Country. Many, civilians somehow managed to get caught in the crossfire between the Jinchuriki and his frightened prey, but hey, shit happens. Jiraiya didn't like it, but he sure as hell wasn't going to get anywhere near the blood-crazed demon vessel. His teacher was just happy that Rice had few shinobi to speak of. Shit would have really hit the fan if a ninja squad had engaged his pupil. When Jiraiya began to teach him how to break a genjutsu, he'd been amazed. The boy was a natural. He didn't even have to try to escape, and the technique would still be released. When his godfather had asked, Naruto had said something about the fox breaking the illusion for him. This made sense considering a pulse of chakra was needed to snap the brain out of its confusion. Apparently just having the demon inside him made the boy genjutsu-proof. However, his aptitude for the skill ended there. It was impossible for him to cast even the slightest genjutsu. Not even the simple henge was within reach for the illusion-challenged boy. But Jiraiya just waved it off and began to teach him ninjutsu. It wasn't like the kid would ever use genjutsu anyway. Destruction was his forte, not trickery. His teacher bypassed the academy ninjutsu completely, deeming them either ineffectual or unnecessary when compared with the boy's skill set. Kawarimi was completely redundant. If Naruto could survive a direct hit from an A-rank assassination jutsu, regrow his head, and laugh it off, then he was certainly able to take a few kunai in the back, or a punch to the jaw. Hell, the little psycho would probably be more pissed off than injured. Bunshin was also ruled out because it was clashed horribly with his student's fighting style. Not that it would have mattered anyway, seeing how it was a genjutsu just like the henge. At first, Jiraiya had tried to teach him tree walking. The main point behind this lesson was to build up the boy's lackluster chakra control as well as impart him with the necessary skill that all shinobi eventually learned. Like most things in the sage's life, this had backfired terribly. The incident last year when the boy lashed out at him was nothing compared to this. For some reason Naruto didn't attack his teacher, he simply took out his rage on a nearby village. Naruto stood on a ridge that overlooked a simple farming village in the south of Rice. He was seething with hatred as he watched the villagers happily going about their business, totally unaware that they weren't going to live to see another day. Behind the 6-year-old boy, 4 blazing chakra tails swished threateningly. He was weak. So weak that he couldn't even master a simple chakra control exercise. His teacher walked up cautiously behind him. The man spoke as though negotiating for the release of a hostage. Naruto, it's okay, just calm down. You can always try again tomorrow. A low growl slid through the boy's clenched fangs. I'm not weak. I'm the host of the legendary nine-tailed fox, and I will not let people think that I'm weak. I will show Jiraiya that I am strong. Hey sensei, want to see some chakra control? His sensei watched in dismay as his protege got down on all fours. Naruto's 4 crimson tails lashed violently against the ground, carving glowing trenches of molten earth in their wake. They snapped forward, coming to a stop before the child's mouth. Bolts of ruby-hued chakra arced between his tails, nearly shrouding his form from view within the tunnel of vermilion light. His tails remained absolutely still, acting as conduits for the demon's chakra as they coaxed the volatile energy towards the child's mouth. Having played their part, his tails struck the ground with a deafening crack, sending up a spray of melted stone on impact. For a moment nothing happened. The boy simply sat there, with enough demonic chakra floating between his gaping jaws to level a mountain. And then he struck. 4-tailed menacing ball. A small spark was the only warning Jiraiya had before a torrent of roiling crimson exploded from the Jinchuriki's gaping maw. Burning rays of light flashed outward and struck the village, instantly igniting it and the surrounding forest into a spectacular blaze. The ground buckled and heaved before exploding violently outward, acting as though it was alive, and was trying desperately to flee from the horrible pain that this boy was inflicting on it. The very sky seemed to melt. Bleed. Fire and ash rained from the heavens as the village was engulfed by the raging conflagration, and its outline greedily devoured by the sea of flames. After that, they were forced to flee Rice Country. Every ninja within 100 miles had been alerted to the boy's presence, and though the Jinchuriki wanted to stay, Jiraiya was able to convince him that they should leave. If Konoha's Jinchuriki as well as Jiraiya of the Sannin were discovered at the scene of the attack, it would plunge the hidden village into yet another war. Of course Naruto hadn't cared one way or the other as to the fate his village would suffer for the crimes he'd committed. He was just happy that so many people now recognized his demon's power. They fled to Lighting Country, a gutsy move considering that the village hidden in the clouds and the village hidden in the leaves had never been on very favorable terms with each other. This proved to be of little consequence. After he'd obliterated the nameless village back in Rice Country, the little demon child was much more mellow, and was only too eager to learn what his godfather had to teach him. The pair picked up where they had left off in Rice Country, chakra control and ninjutsu training. At the same time, the Sannin taught the boy how to wield kunai and shuriken, again. If it was possible, the boy appeared to have gotten even worse at throwing projectiles after the 2-year intermission between his training sessions. This time, not even the shuriken managed to stick into the target, a task that was very difficult to accomplish seeing how a shuriken's entire striking area was a blade. Again the blunted portions of the weapons became more deadly than the intended blades. In his ire, the boy had crushed one of the weapons into a ball of crumpled steel and threw it at his target. Hurtling through the air at hypersonic speeds, the steel sphere struck dead center of the target, causing the wooden board to nearly disintegrate under the force of the blow. Jiraiya had his answer. The Toad Hermit had bought a duffel bag, loaded it up with as many ball bearings as he could, gave it to his student, and sent him off to practice his aim. Every single ball had hit its target with marksman-level accuracy. In essence, the Sannin had turned his godson into a cannon, and by using the Kyuubi's eyes as long-range telescopic sights, Naruto ensured that one shot was all it ever took to put a target down for good. The only problem was that now Naruto wouldn't do anything but throw projectiles. The boy was infuriating. He would camp out on cliffs for weeks at a time, sniping any cloud shinobi, traveler, holy man, or small furry creature that had the ill fortune of straying too close to his position. After killing nearly 40 Kyuubi in a period of 2 months, Jiraiya once again deemed that they needed to relocate. Like always, Naruto had complained, but lately the demon vessel hadn't been putting any heat into his words. It had been nearly 4 months since he last threatened to kill his godfather, and he'd been much less dangerous to spar with as of recently. At first the Sannin had thought that the child was beginning to have a change of heart, but after watching him pick off Cloud9 from a mile out, cackling manically all the while, the notion was quashed. Perhaps the boy had grown fond of him, yeah right. Naruto was licking his claws clean after devouring another nameless victim. Although he didn't know the man's name, and didn't care, he had to commend the man for being such a tasty snack. He'd never eaten a pirate before, having spent his entire life either in a forest village, or on the run from armies of angry ninja. He'd expected pirates to taste terrible, considering that they were a ninja's mortal enemy, but Naruto took the high road. The boy just wasn't the type given to prejudice. He ate all people equally regardless of race, profession, or religious doctrine, and now he was very happy that he'd expanded his palate. Must have something to do with the salty air, he mused. Kid. Jiraiya groaned from his position at the helm. That's disgusting. The Jinchuriki rolled his eyes. Bigot. He turned around and what he saw caused the pirate meat to fall out of his mouth. His godfather was sporting a long naval petticoat, along with a puffy white shirt, black pants, and an eye patch. An enormous feather sprouted from the wide black hat covered his spiky white hair, and for some reason a monkey with a vest was perched on his shoulder. What the hell are you wearing? He exclaimed in horror. What kind of self-respecting ninja would dress up like a pirate? The ninja/pirate raised an eyebrow at his student's outburst. What kind of self-respecting ninja eats a pirate? He replied. A hungry one. Naruto deadpanned. What? It wasn't enough for you that we stole their ship, so now we're stealing their clothes, the blonde paused, and their monkeys? A smug look spread across his sensei's face as began to stroke the monkey on his shoulder. Commandeered. He corrected. We commandeered their ship. And the difference is, the boy motioned for him to continue. It's a nautical term. Both he and the monkey tilted their heads to the side. Savvy? For a long while the boy said nothing. Finally, he turned around and continued to eat his pirate. Bloody pirates. The pair sailed towards the land of waves. Hopefully, they would be able to find a remote island where he and Naruto could cut loose without having to worry about collateral damage. Jiraiya was right for once. The Misty Island country was a good choice for training the violent Jinchuriki, and after 2 years, the boy had finally managed to complete his sporadic ninjutsu training. He could now tree climb and water walk, as well as use the Shadow Clone, Fire Dragon Missile, Swamp of the Underworld, Earth-style wall, and after much whining from his sensei, the Rasengan. It had taken the boy so long to complete his ninjutsu training because his chakra control was horrible, that, and after he'd finally learned how to rein it in, he began inventing a few ninjutsu of his own. At the monument he only had 2, the Cannonade Doppelganger and the Yambi Rasengan, but both were incredibly dangerous. The first was just his personal twist on the Shadow Clone Shuriken Jutsu. Unable to even throw shurikens, let alone use them in a jutsu, the boy had tweaked the existing technique to include his favorite projectile, a 3-pound steel ball. The result was devastating. With hundreds of heavy metal balls flying through the air at nearly Mach speed, entire battalions could be wiped out in the blink of an eye. That fact alone was enough to judge it an S-rank jutsu, only Naruto had gone one step further. When his godfather had first begun his ninjutsu training, he had tested the boy to see what his chakra affinity was. As it turned out, Naruto had 2 elements, fire and wind. There was no question that the fox was behind his fire element, and apparently wind was his natural affinity. Fire and wind was a deadly combination for a shinobi to have, considering that the wind element fueled the ninja's fire jutsu to greater heights. Point in case was the Fire Dragon Missile. For a normal shinobi, the Fire Dragon Missile was a B-rank, mid-range ninjutsu, formidable but not unstoppable. For the host of the Nine Tails, the Fire Dragon Missile was a long-range A-rank jutsu that bordered on S-rank. Just adding a little bit of wind chakra brought the technique to an entirely different level. His original jutsu, the Cannonade Doppelganger, gained its lethal nature by piggybacking off of the force that the original ball was thrown with. One 3-pound ball traveling at 500 miles per hour became 1,000. This was just brute force and a cloning technique, but still it lived up to its S-rank title. For some reason, the boy must have found its destructive power to be inadequate, and, for lack of a better word, upgraded it. By infusing the original ball with wind chakra then throwing it, the technique became incomparably destructive. The steel spheres cut through air at ungodly speeds, and the shell of wind chakra amplified the sphere's penetration power to the utmost. Even if his opponent took cover behind a mountain, the steel balls would still hit their target. When you were under fire by this jutsu, there was no escape. The Yambi Rasengan was his second original jutsu. Simply put, it was a technique intended for use on a target that absolutely, positively, could not be allowed to see another day. In a nutshell, it was the four-tailed menacing ball in the palm of his hand. The only difference was that now he could change the ball's path. Erecting a barrier jutsu like the Earth-style wall would do nothing to lessen the impact of the Rasengan, because Naruto would just sidestep the obstacle and deliver his payload. Mind you, the backlash from the Yambi Rasengan would instantly retire any normal nin that attempted to use the jutsu. Anyone who valued their limbs would want to stay as far away from this jutsu as they could. But on the other hand, Naruto was the only person who could even use the jutsu, so the unfortunate side effect of losing an arm or a leg upon detonation could be overlooked. Upon finishing his ninjutsu training, Jiraiya had suggested that they begin to head back towards Fire Country. His student had growled at this but reluctantly agreed to follow him back. The Jinchuriki may have respected him as a warrior, and had actually grown rather fond of his godfather, but even so, the boy still hadn't warmed up to the fact that he was going to be a Konoha nin. After another year of traveling around Fire Country, the Sannin had basically exhausted what his student was willing to learn. The boy had picked up stealth and espionage remarkably quickly considering his violent personality. Though, after Jiraiya had remembered that his pupil had sneaking around for almost 10 years as a manhunter, his pride as a master teacher had been somewhat lessened. The boy had calmed down significantly. He'd left the Leaf Village 6 years ago, but a few of his animalistic habits had remained. He still ate people and he still had issues with his anger, but overall the blonde was very agreeable. Sort of. Over the years, the Kyuubi had been oddly silent within the boy. This had caused the would-be nin to latch onto his godfather as a replacement companion. It all made sense now. Naruto was happy when the sage beat him in their spars because it reminded him that the man was a worthy opponent. The veteran ninja was powerful enough to beat him, and was therefore worthy of recognition and was welcomed as one of the pack. He just had to remember who the alpha fox was. This pack mentality became disturbingly clear when they began to live in populated areas for extended periods of time. The idea was to reintroduce his feral student to civilized life by moving from town to town, traveling to more populated villages when the boy seemed to be ready to do so. The first 3 relocations passed without issue, and the Sannin began to relax and fall back into a normal routine. That had been a mistake. When the man had been training with his godson, he'd either been fighting for his life or trying to teach the bull-headed child something new. This meant that Jiraiya, the legendary super pervert, was nearly 6 years behind on his research. After making sure Naruto wasn't going to massacre any innocent bystanders, the pervy sage had left for some well-earned peeping. Of course he'd let himself get caught. Being beaten by a mob of half-naked women usually meant that he could cop a feel, or 30, and no one would be the wiser. However, his overprotective student went insane at sight of someone else beating on his pack mate and had attacked. He'd pulled his teacher clear and then gone to hell on village with Kanonade doppelganger jutsu. After that was done, the village, along with several others that just so happened to be located in the direction that Naruto had fired, had been utterly annihilated. Only after another year had passed did the not-so-pervy sage feel that it was safe to let his student back into a village. The Jinchuriki was sitting on a bench in the village's park watching as the sun began to set behind the trees. Contrary to what most people would assume, Naruto liked sunsets. They were peaceful, and it was one of the few times that his favorite color appeared naturally. His softly glowing eyes were drawn from the scene when a small rubber ball hit his feet. "Sorry, Oniai-chan." A childish voice called to him from a short distance off. "Can you give us back our ball?" Naruto picked up the little ball and locked eyes with the child that had addressed him. He could have killed the happy little girl that was smiling at him, but he didn't. The ball had annoyed him slightly, but it wasn't like it had hit him in the face or something. It had been an accident, and the child was sorry about disturbing him. And most importantly, she'd been respectful. Besides, killing a child would make a mockery of the kitsune's power. He only killed the weak if he needed food or if they disrespected him. He tossed the ball back and returned to his sunset. Thanks, Oni-chan, the little girl said as she and her friends began to play their game again. 7 years ago you probably would have killed that girl, the Sannin said as he sat down next to the demon vessel. Naruto smirked. You're right, I probably would have. The two of them sat in peaceful silence as they watched the fiery orange of the setting sun dissolve into the inky curtain of night. His sensei began to fiddle with his vest pockets. I got you a present. Oh? What's the occasion? The man pulled out a rectangular box and handed it to the boy. It's your birthday. Naruto looked confused. You never gave me a present on any of my other birthdays. What makes this one so special? His godfather chuckled. If I'd tried this kind of thing before now, you probably would have gotten angry with me or something. Naruto smiled. Yeah, you're probably right, though I suspect you were just being stingy. He added as an afterthought. Oh Naruto, you wound me so with your cruel, cruel words. The sage exclaimed melodramatically. Just open your present, you little ingrate. The boy did so. In the box rested a pair of orange and black fingerless gloves. You got me gloves? He asked, feeling a little let down. You are stingy. Jiraiya turned his nose up. I am not. He contradicted snootily. He quickly dropped the act before the boy got mad. Those gloves have seals on the palms that will allow you to summon one of your oh-so-special cannonballs into the palm of your hand. Just channel some chakra into them and poof, instant carnage. The best part is, you look stylish and don't have to lug around that unwieldy duffel bag anymore. How's that for stingy? Naruto grinned as he slipped on the gloves. You always manage to get me the perfect birthday presents. The Jinchuriki tapped his stomach. His sensei just smiled and turned back to watch the rising moon. What can I say, kid? I aim to please. Chapter 5, The Mountain. Another year passed before the pair returned to Konoha, and during this time the boy had learned absolutely nothing. The simple fact of the matter was that Jiraiya had nothing left to teach him. Or, that is to say, he considered his godson to be dangerous enough for the time being. In any case, Naruto didn't seem to care one way or the other. The one thing that never really changed over the years was the boy's insufferable pride. Rather than try to humble the boy, and most likely end up headless in the process, his godfather just let it be, and as a result the boy had gotten even worse. At the beginning of the trip he'd only been a Jinchuriki, and only was a rather iffy word to use when describing a demon vessel. Now, he was a Jinchuriki that knew 2 S-rank jutsus, 5 A-rank jutsus, trained extensively in hand-to-hand combat for nearly 8 years, and who could forget, was able to pop of a target's head at close to a mile away. Most genin couldn't even touch their sensei. Naruto had nearly killed his. His pride was well earned. But that didn't make him any less obnoxious. However, pride aside, the demon child was ready to return to Konoha, and so the Sannin had sent a messenger frog to his teacher. The old man had written back, "You may return when I have called for you." In other words, his teacher was in the middle of a diplomatic pissing contest with the clans and the council. Contrary to popular belief, paperwork was not the bane of all Kages. Political backlash was. Along with their undying fear of paperwork, many people were also under the impression that a Kage had absolute control over their hidden village. This was also false. In theory, a Kage held all the power in the village, but in reality, their power was disturbingly finite. The old man wasn't able to just kill people left and right for disagreeing with him. That is to say, legally he had the power to do so, but if he tried, his ninja would instantly rebel and strike him down. For all of the laws that the village had, it was still the person holding the biggest rock that was in charge. There was no question that Sarutobi held the biggest rock, but this did him little good if every ninja in the village turned on him. The majority of the clan heads, as well as the civilian council, were vehemently opposed to the idea of letting the demon child return. And Sarutobi couldn't exactly blame them for doing so. Naruto's attack during the day of mourning 8 years ago was still very fresh in the minds of citizens of Konoha. As such, they would never allow their leader to bring back the creature that had caused nothing but hardship for the village. This was true, but the simple fact of the matter was that Naruto was their ultimate weapon. All of Sarutobi's long-term plans rode on the boy. If the Nine Tails was coaxed into the hands of their enemies, the village would be razed to the ground within an hour. He had to return to the village as quickly as possible. In the end, it had come down to base intimidation. The clan heads had threatened to remove him from office, by force if the need arose, but Sarutobi had simply smiled at this. He pointed out that Jiraiya would be very displeased with them for killing his teacher, probably to the point where he would go rouge. As this was sinking in, the old ninja had offhandedly commented that Konoha's Jinchuriki was very protective of his godfather. He wondered aloud what the young boy would do to those who had killed his teacher's teacher. This of course shut everybody up. They tried to bully him by throwing stones. He retaliated by dropping a mountain on their heads. More often than not, this was the way that ninja politics played out. The clans and the council had no option other than to submit to their leader. But as a conciliation prize, the Hokage was willing to give in to a few of their demands. It's much easier to rule when people were under the misguided impression that their opinions mattered. Most of the demands had no bearing on the demon child whatsoever. The most common of the demands were petty things that the civilian council wanted. Things like Naruto can't eat here or Naruto can't buy from so-and-so, and so on and so forth. In layman's terms, nitpicking. The Sandaime knew full well that the boy would eat whoever he wanted wherever he wanted, and that it would be a cold day in hell before the little bastard ever started taking orders from him. So he'd agreed. He loved Konoha, but people were going to die regardless of what he did. Right now, his job was to minimize casualties, not keep everyone happy. He could either anger the civilians or he could anger the Kyuubi. The civilians were clearly the lesser of two evils. The ninja present were a different story. They had wanted to wait another year to bring Naruto back, citing the upcoming Chunin exams as the reason to delay his return. If the boy was present during the exams and Kami forbid, killed one of the visiting dignitaries, Konoha would be ruined. Once word got around that the Leaf Village was home to a crazy ninja who ate potential customers, no one would hire a Leaf Nin ever again. The village's economy would be in shambles, making it all too easy for IWA or Kumo to finish them off for good. Sarutobi wanted to tear his hair out at naivety of their argument. In his letter requesting their return, Jiraiya had given him an overview of the Jinchuriki's training. Right now, the only thing that the old man could think about was the passage that detailed Naruto's brief stint in Lightning Country. If the blonde thought it was fun to set up shop on a cliffside and throw heavy steel balls at Cloud Nin, how would he react when he saw a bunch of rich, brightly clothed, fat people walking slowly and in single file towards the village gates? He'd have a fucking field day. If the child wasn't within the village walls by the time the Chunin exams began, the Leaf would be ruined. It was possible, though highly improbable, that the boy would risk attacking a VIP while he was within the village walls. Naruto was strong, but he knew that he wasn't able to beat the entire ninja population of Konoha, plus 2 or 3 irate visiting Kages. He would most likely hole up in a dark, quiet place until the exams had blown over. But if he was outside the village with only Jiraiya holding onto his leash when a procession of easy targets walked by, it would be a bloodbath. The Sandaime knew what the ninja were after. In reality, the clans wanted to postpone the boy's return because they didn't want their children to get stuck on a team with him. After the Hokage had informed them that Naruto would not be placed on a genin team due to the inherent danger it would bring, the clans had become quite agreeable. However, this statement was only half true. Prior to the meeting, it had become public knowledge that Jiraiya was assigned to be a Jonin sensei due to the lack of ninja who'd volunteered for the position this year. Naturally, the clans had been ready to rip out each other's throats if it meant that their child would be taught by one of the legendary Sannin. This forced Sarutobi to act rather quickly, fearing that the clans would take after his Jinchuriki and actually rip out each other's throats. It had been a long outstanding Konoha tradition to pair the dead last of the graduating class with the top-marking boy and girl. The lesser-known side of this team setup was that the sensei was oftentimes totally inexperienced when it came to teaching raw genin. Jiraiya wasn't new to teaching per se, but it was close enough to count. It had been more than 20 years since the Toad Sannin had taught Minato's team, and his recent work with Naruto had been completely different than training a normal genin. Point in case, a normal genin was incredibly fragile and had to be protected for quite some time before they could actually stand on their own 2 feet. Naruto was the very antithesis of fragile. The boy was pretty cool, he regularly got his head drilled in and wasn't afraid of anything. Superscript 1. But shitty grammar aside, for some reason this method created abnormally strong genin teams. or S-rank criminals, though that small detail was often overlooked. As it was, Inuzuka Kiba was the dead last of the class, with Yamanaka Ino and Uchiha Sasuke at the opposite side of the spectrum, both having top scores. These three were chosen to make up the unofficial Team Jiraiya, much to the chagrin of the remaining clan heads. However, the Hokage had neglected to tell them one vital detail. The sage's only stipulation had been that his godson was to remain with him so that he could keep a close eye on the boy's behavior. On paper, Naruto would never be on a genin team, but he would be hovering dangerously close to Jiraiya's. However, the Sandaime would only divulge that little piece of information to the clans after his mountain was securely in hand. Kiba growled as he looked at the seat behind him. Smirking back was Uchiha Sasuke, jackass extraordinaire. The boy had done nothing but piss him off from day one. When he first arrived at the academy, Kiba had tried to befriend him. Sasuke had arrogantly stated that he would not befriend a weakling from a nothing clan, and had promptly turned to leave, as though the mere presence of the other boy sickened him. As expected, Kiba had attacked him in a fit of rage, hoping that he could catch his opponent off guard and quickly win the fight. The fight was short. Kiba had gotten his ass handed to him by the much more experienced Uchiha. For years later, it still made him angry. In the weekly spars, Sasuke had proven himself time and again as he quickly and gracefully dispatched his opponents, cementing his place as the #1 taijutsu combatant. This had frustrated the boy to no end because his clan's claim to fame had been their unmatched ferocity in unarmed combat. Yet the Uchiha had managed to beat him at his own game over and over again, making his victories look easy. As if that wasn't bad enough, Sasuke also had the entire female population of their class chasing after him and proclaiming their undying love for him. That wasn't the bad part. The bad part was that he didn't do anything about it. He just sat there, stoic and composed as the girls went wild over how cool Sasuke-kun was. Kiba would have killed to be in the other boy's position, and just to spite him, the Uchiha did nothing. He didn't even seem interested in girls. That train of thought, of course, spawned the notorious Sasuke joke amongst the other boys in the class, but it was quickly snuffed out after he decimated them in the weekly sparring matches. The boy was absolutely perfect, and he was stuck as the dead last, just because he'd rather sleep than do written work. What good did the history of Konoha do him in a fight anyway? Again he growled. Sasuke continued to look smug. A lazy voice to his left snapped him out of his staring contest. Simmer down, Kiba. It's too troublesome to get worked up like that. The Inuzuka rolled his eyes. Shikamaru said that about everything. In fact, he was fairly certain that the lazy boy would stop breathing if it wouldn't kill him. I can't help it, that guy just rubs me the wrong way. The crumpled heap of Shikamaru on the desk made a small noise of annoyance. Troublesome. You'll probably never see him again after you graduate, so why should you care what he does? Kiba was about to reply when he realized that the boy fallen asleep. He contemplated hitting him on his oddly pineapple-shaped head to wake him up, but decided against it. Letting out a defeated sigh, he slumped in his chair and began to prod the sleeping Akamaru on his head. "Ya hear that, buddy? We won't have to deal with that stuck-up jackass anymore." The puppy on his head just yawned and burrowed deeper into the hood of his coat. That was something to look forward to. Never seeing Sasuke's haughty smirk was going to be the highlight of this year. Or so he thought. After Iruka had silenced the class with the notorious big head jutsu, he gave them a long, and rather boring, speech about how they were ninja now and how they were expected to act like adults. At least that's what Kiba thought his teacher was talking about. He'd chosen to follow Akamaru's example and burrow into his coat in hopes that he could sleep, and as such, only caught every third or fourth word that the man said. He was rudely awoken by a piece of chalk bouncing off his forehead. Iruka stared at him pointedly. At least he had the common decency to look embarrassed. "Sorry, sensei." He rubbed the back of his head. The Chunin just sighed and began to assign them their genin squads. Kiba dozed off again until he heard his name called. Team 7 consisting of Inuzuka Kiba, his and Akamaru's heads popped up. Yamanaka Ino, simultaneous groans were heard. And Uchiha Sasuke. At this, Kiba's head slammed loudly against his desk, causing his puppy to bounce not too gracefully off the hardwood surface. The little dog latched on to one of his ears, and over the pain and the growling he was able to hear a loud cry of, "Ha! In your face, forehead, Sasuke-kun is all mine!" Followed shortly thereafter by several anguished cries from the female population. This prompted yet another use of the big head jutsu. Mayhem. As I was saying, Team 7 consisting of Inuzuka Kiba, Yamanaka Ino, and Uchiha Sasuke, your Jonin instructor will be Jiraiya of the Sannin. Pandemonium ensued. However, Kiba paid no attention. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Hell yeah! With him as my sensei, I'll definitely become a kick-ass ninja. It's almost worth having the noisy girl and pompous prick on my team. He spared a glance out of the corner of his eye at Sasuke. The boy was grinning. Not one of his usual smirks, but a full-on split-your-face-in-half grin. It was kinda creepy. No, it was really creepy. But who cares? I got the Toad Sage Jiraiya. After Iruka had announced the rest of the teams, he'd informed them that they would have to wait for their teachers to pick them up. Fortunately, Kiba didn't have to wait very long. After Team 8, made up of Sakura, Hinata, and Shino, had been escorted out by some smokin' hot chick with red eyes, Jiraiya made his appearance. The pervy sage was nothing if not flashy. Smoke filled the room and a chorus of croaking filled the air. In the center of haze a hand shot out, fingers spread and swaying in tune to the music. As the smoke began to fade away, the Sannin spoke. From the east to the west and the north to the south he roams, battling the forces of evil and darkness. A faint silhouette became visible within the cloud. Men lock up their wives and babies dry their tears before my gallant presence. The legendary sage of Mount Myobokuzan, the smoke cleared completely, revealing a man standing in a strange pose atop a giant red and brown toad. Jiraiya. For a few seconds nothing happened, and then the room went insane. The newly christened genin flocked around the perverted sage, asking him a myriad of questions or simply screaming and passing out. Jiraiya was very proud with himself at the moment, but a small spike of hateful chakra quickly froze the blood in his veins. He had forgotten one very important thing: Naruto was competitive by nature. Killing intent flooded through the room, bringing the academy students to their knees by the sheer magnitude of the murderous aura. A whirlwind of red light exploded from the center of the room, sending tendrils of demonic chakra arcing through the room, hungrily seeking out a victim to devour. Abruptly the chakra storm stopped, revealing a blond boy dressed in loose-fitting orange and black ninja attire, razor-sharp claws extended, fangs bared and crimson eyes blazing. Jiraiya-sensei, you forgot to mention me. He chided darkly as he began to advance on the Sannin. How will I ever make any new friends if nobody knows my name? The Toad Sage just rolled his eyes. Enough with the theatrics, Naruto, they get it. You're a badass. How about you just wait at the training ground like we discussed, and we'll come and get you after we're all acquainted with one another. The Jinchuriki pouted. You used to be a lot more fun than this. His childish look was quickly evaporated as he turned on Iruka. Do you remember me, Scarface? He grinned wickedly. Terrified, Iruka could only nod. Excellent, he crooned. I was beginning to fear that the village had forgotten me. With that he vanished in another blast of toxic chakra. Jiraiya groaned as he looked at his cowering genin team. Why did his godson always have to make things difficult? Chapter 6, Lies. One thing that wasn't taught in the Ninja Academy was that for a shinobi, death was an unavoidable reality. Every facet of a ninja's life revolved around death, so much so, that by the time a ninja makes jonin, the practice of taking a life has become second nature to them. After a while, killing becomes a reflex, like blinking or breathing. Reports of blood-drenched jonin returning from their mission and reporting that nothing had happened were fairly common. In most cases, the veteran shinobi had literally killed their attacker in their sleep, or had killed their opponent, and had then forgotten that they'd done so. The most famous example of this kill-and-forget mentality that most high-ranking ninja developed had been demonstrated by Kakashi. The copy nin had been assigned an A-rank mission that entailed the assassination of a missing nin who had taken over a large village in the south of Fire Country. The man had declared that the conquered town would become known henceforth as the village hidden in the darkness, and had appointed himself Shodaime Yamakage. To make a long story short, Kakashi had killed the self-proclaimed Kage, and had then proceeded to roam the countryside for nearly 3 weeks, searching for his long-dead target. He only returned to Konoha after he discovered that some spineless bastard had stolen his kill nearly a month ago, causing his mission to result in a failure. Having already received payment for the mission, Sarutobi simply chuckled softly at the Jonin's report before telling him that he was dismissed. The killing reflex or auto-kill syndrome was polar opposite when compared to the mentality of a fresh genin graduate. Many genin were under the mistaken impression that the life of a ninja was glamorous and exciting. They imagined that they would grow up to be heroes, legendary ninja who garnered respect and adoration from all who encountered them. The overall attitude was that they would become powerful warriors who would one day swoop down on the enemies of the hidden leaf and crush them. To them, death didn't even enter into the equation. How could they possibly be killed? After all, they were ninja. However, the brutal reality was that more than half of them would die when confronted with their first kill. After that, 1 in 3 of those who succeeded in making their first kill would retire from ninja life completely. Cold hard statistics showed that out of the 30 genin who graduated from the academy, only 4 or 5 of them would live to see their 25th birthday. After Naruto's flamboyant entrance, many of the academy graduates were ready to hand in their newly acquired Hittites and quit being ninja altogether. Jiraiya couldn't really blame them for wanting to do so. His godson's overwhelming killing intent had crushed their misguided view of ninja life into dust. They were mortal, they could die, and most importantly, there's always a bigger fish, so whatever you do, don't piss it off. Of course, Jiraiya and Iruka had played the whole situation off like it was one big practical joke, saying things like, of course that wasn't a demon. And I guess one of last year's graduates wanted to haze the newbie genin. In short order, lying through their teeth. But this could be considered a necessary evil. The village desperately needed to replenish its ninja population. First the Kyuubi attacked, and then it attacked again wearing the guise of a 4-year-old boy. Alone, these 2 attacks had claimed more than half of their shinobi forces, a crippling situation for any village to endure, and even then, another dark day was on the horizon for Konoha. 3 years after the demon child had left, an ANBU captain known as Uchiha Itachi massacred his entire family, leaving only his younger brother alive. The Uchiha were elite leaf nin, but more importantly, their clan was huge. When Itachi slew his clan, he'd simultaneously robbed the village of its most powerful bloodline, and killed off perhaps 10% of Konoha's shinobi forces. After losing more than half of its military in a period of 7 years, the leaf was out of time. With both Kumo and Iwa snapping at its throat, and no military to defend against a combined attack from 2 of the strongest shinobi villages, Konoha would surely be annihilated. However, it was Naruto, the bane of Konoha, who ended up saving the village. 4 years ago, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails demonstrated a fraction of his prisoner's matchless power by completely atomizing a village in southern Rice Country. This unintentional display of force had stopped the enemy villages dead. Even though both villages had control over Jinchuriki, they would not risk open war with the keeper of the nine-tailed Biju King. If their demons fought, no one would emerge victorious. Konoha was granted a brief reprieve, but it wouldn't last forever. They had to repopulate their military immediately, or they would be forced to rely on an unstable, sadistic little boy to shield them from the Cloud and the Rock villages. So now they were lying to children, tricking them into dying for their village. It was the way things had to be. Jiraiya led his Genin team to Training Ground 56. Training Ground 56 was an area that primarily taught ninja how to use the environment to their advantage. It was a large marshy plain, partially submerged under dingy gray water. Towards the outside it was ringed by a thick bamboo forest that cast shadows that appeared to never stop moving. The entire training ground was eerily quiet save for the soft squishing of mud under his students' feet. Ino wrinkled her nose. This place is gross. Everything is wet and this nasty swamp smell is never going to get out of my clothes. The Sannin sent her a brief backwards glance as he continued walking. Just think of how your teammate feels, he replied. Another quick glance backwards landed on a very sick-looking Kiba trying to use the hood of his coat as a makeshift gas mask. He did not envy the Inuzuka's heightened sense of smell at the moment. The blonde's eyebrows raised in realization. Oh, of course. She turned to Sasuke. Sasuke-kun, are you alright? I know this place smells horrible, but if you walk close enough to me, my perfume should cover it up. Sasuke didn't say anything, he just continued to walk forward. He was talking about me, you idiot. The indigent muffled voice of Kiba interjected. Ino rounded on her teammate with her hands on her hips. You! Don't be such a pervert. The only boy who can smell me is Sasuke-kun. I don't want to smell you, Kiba shot back. And even if I did, I'm an Inuzuka, I could smell your perfume from a mile away. But it's probably better if I didn't, since you would smell just as bad as the swamp. Jiraiya winced at his student's blunder. Kiba was correct, of course. The marsh stink had probably already saturated the girl's clothing. However, he lacked the necessary tact to protect himself from the girl's fury. Right now, the Sannin was remembering a very similar situation between him and his curvaceous teammate. Have fun hopping around, kid. She gave Kiba a murderous look before lashing out with her foot, connecting squarely with her teammate's shin. As the super pervert predicted, the boy began to hop around like a monkey who'd been stung by a wasp. Ow, son of a bitch! What the hell did you eat this morning? Soldier pills. TCH, some ninja you turned out to be, stated a smug Sasuke. I guess I shouldn't be surprised though, given that you come from a no-talent clan of flea-bitten mongrels. Kiba's face contorted into a mask of pure rage. Okay, pretty boy, let's go! The Inuzuka rushed his smirking opponent, swinging at his head. The Uchiha read the boy's attack and caught him by the wrist. Utilizing the slick terrain, he slid forward, bending Kiba's arm at an awkward angle and kneeing him in the stomach. The boy didn't even have time to register the hit to his gut before he found his leg kicked out from under him and his face buried in the foul-smelling muck, a still smirking Sasuke on his back. Ino cheered at how cool her Sasuke-kun looked, but the boy in question just ignored her. Her opinion meant nothing. She was just as bad as the idiot pined underneath him. However, if Jiraiya was impressed, then his victory had meaning. As he turned to his sensei, Sasuke's smirk was instantly wiped off his face. The Toad Sage was scowling at him, clearly displeased with how his student had acted. So you like to beat up people weaker than you? He asked in a voice like ice. The next thing Sasuke knew, it felt like his head had been struck by a sledgehammer. His vision went fuzzy and his ears began to ring, but still, he vaguely became aware that he was skipping like a stone across the wet ground. He slowly skidded to a stop, and after lying on his back for a few minutes in a vain attempt to try and stop the world from spinning, he shakily got to his feet. He looked towards his teacher. Jiraiya hadn't moved at all. He was just massaging his temples in an attempt to alleviate his current aggravation. Naruto managed to fuck everything up. You should play nicely with others, instructed a phantom whisper. The groggy Uchiha turned to face the voice. What he saw froze his blood. The demon from the academy. For a few seconds Sasuke couldn't even breathe. It wasn't a practical joke being played on the newbie genin by one of last year's graduates. It was a monster. A living, breathing monster. His mind screamed at him to run and hide from this creature standing behind him, but he couldn't. He was frozen with fear. That thought hit him like a bolt of lightning. He was an Uchiha, the last Uchiha, and yet he was cowering like an infant in the presence of this demon. Sasuke grit his teeth. He was a ninja, a fearless shinobi of the leaf, yet he couldn't even bring himself to face his foe. How could he possibly kill Itachi and avenge his clan if he couldn't even look at this creature? I'm not weak. I will destroy you, Itachi. Without warning, he pivoted on the slick grass, drawing a kunai from the holster on his leg as he spun, and burying it up to the hilt in the grinning demon's neck. He leapt back, retrieving another kunai. And to his horror, the demon boy didn't fall. Hell, he didn't even flinch. Naruto's ruby eyes lazily examined the blade that was jammed into his throat. The boy's expression didn't change as he ripped the blade out of his neck and tossed it to the ground in front of Sasuke's feet. You missed your target. You hit my clavicle instead of my jugular. A sharp metallic click caused a pair of wicked-looking talons to extend from the boy's fingers. Here, I'll show you how you do it. Naruto. The boy's head jerked towards his godfather. Jiraiya had a disappointed look on his face. Genin? Really? The insane grin on the boy's face fell as he looked back at a trembling Sasuke. The boy was weak. Far too weak to put up a decent fight against him. He could crush the little Uchiha like a bug beneath his boot, but this fact brought up a very pressing question. Why kill a bug? No one prospered from killing an insect. In the end, all you wound up with was a dead bug and a bunch of sticky goo on your shoes. The Jinchuriki turned away. No. Your flesh will not satisfy my hunger. There's no honor to be gleaned by killing trash like you. And with that, Naruto's claws retracted and he disappeared. The Toad Sannin breathed a sigh of relief. For a moment there, It looked like Sasuke would end up as fox food regardless of the fact that he was no challenge to the boy. He signaled for his students to gather around him, and as they were walking warily towards their sensei, the hermit raised a slab of dry land out of the marsh for them to sit on. As they sat down, the Sannin examined his team. Ino was faring the best out of the three. Aside from looking slightly pale, she seemed to be perfectly fine. Kiba wasn't in as good of condition as his blonde teammate, but he would live. His wounds were superficial, and the mud that now caked the front of his body wouldn't hurt anything except his pride. Sasuke was the worse off, but would still be fine. The punch that his godson had caught the boy with would hurt like a son of a bitch, but would do much more than that. Like Kiba, his pride was probably more damaged than his body. Thank Kami Naruto was pulling his punches. If he'd hit the other boy at full force, they'd be finding bits of Uchiha head in Lightning Country. What the hell was that? Muttered Sasuke as he continued to rub his throbbing skull. Jiraiya glared at him. I was about to ask you the very same thing. You provoked your teammate into attacking you so that you could impress your sensei by beating him. Guess what, kid? I'm not impressed. I'm pissed off. Sasuke's eyes drifted away from Jiraiya's, hoping that if he appeared aloof the older man would just leave him alone. Right now he didn't need to be scolded. The sound of muffled snickering to his right drew the Sannin's attention to Kiba. What are you laughing at, idiot? Don't forget that it was you who attacked your teammate first. Also don't forget that he kicked your ass because you couldn't control your temper. Kiba and Akamaru sagged. And you, he pointed at Ino. Did you say that you're wearing perfume? The girl gave him a cautious look. Yeah, why does that matter? Jiraiya pinched his brow in exasperation. Kiba. The boy looked at him. What did you say to Ino earlier? The boy perked up and grinned mischievously. That she smells like a swamp. A sharp punch to the arm quickly wiped the smile off his face. He rubbed his arm gingerly. Damn it, woman, quit hitting your teammate. Geez, you hit like a man. This comment earned him another punch. The hermit sighed. Kid, you need to learn how to keep your mouth shut and look pretty, otherwise you're not going to last very long. He refocused on Ino. He said that he could smell you from a mile away. Now, I'm not even trained in tracking by scent and I could find you. Lesson 1. He held up a finger. Kunoichi do not wear perfume, they don't dye it, and they don't try to be pretty. If you do any of these things, you'll probably wind up dead. A faint pulse of killing intent reached the Sannin. Apparently Naruto was becoming restless. He would have to finish this next part quickly. You are all teammates now, and as such I expect you to leave your personal feelings behind. I don't care if you all hate each other. I don't care if you all hate me. You will become a functional ninja squad and you will stop acting like children. Do you understand? A mumbled yes, sensei, was the only acknowledgement that the Toad Sage got, but it would have to make do. Jiraiya brightened. Okay, I'm done being hardest sensei now. So how about we get to know each other? His students were caught off guard by his abrupt change in mood. So, what do we say? Ino asked. Oh, nothing much, just tell us your name, things you like or hate, and what your goal for the future is. Kiba pointed at him. How about you go first? Jiraiya smiled. He'd said the very same thing to Sarutobi nearly 4 decades ago. All right. My name is Jiraiya of the Sannin. He giggled. Writing and researching literature. And sometimes, if I feel I've earned it, I'll relax by the hot springs. Don't you mean in the hot springs? Ino interrupted. Jiraiya's perverted grin widened. Oh, you're dirty. His students shared a confused look, but it went unnoticed by their teacher. I dislike people who abandon their comrades, and people who would betray their friends in order to become powerful. And my goal for the future is to see the 3 of you make Jonin. He pointed back at Kiba. Your turn, dog boy. The Inuzuka sent him an irritated look at the dog boy comment, but he let it slide. He'd eaten enough mud today. My name is Inuzuka Kiba. I like Akamaru, the little head dog yipped. And learning new ninjutsu. I dislike people who look down on my clan or underestimate my skill. He shot a glare at Sasuke, who pointedly ignored it. And my goal for the future is to become head of the ANBU Hunter Nin like my dad was. Jiraiya nodded. This kid was so similar to him when he was young that it was scary. Princess. Go. Ino flicked a piece of hair out of her face and began to speak. My name is Yamanaka Ino. I like flowers, and she trailed off, looking at Sasuke out of the corner of her eye. I dislike perverts, the Sannin winced. And people who are annoying. She growled like forehead. And my goal for the future, she blushed and again began stare at the Uchiha. A fangirl. Goody. He nodded at Sasuke. Duck hair? Sasuke ignored the hair remark and steepled his hands in front of his face. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are very few things that I like and there are many things that I hate. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Great, another psycho for me to deal with. At least I can beat this one up if he gets out of line. The boy continued to speak, not noticing his sensei's inner commentary. My dream for the future is more of an ambition, really. To revive my clan. Ino blushed again. And to kill a certain man. Yep. Psycho. The sage's train of thought was interrupted by mocking applause. He groaned. Speaking of psychos. Naruto melted out of the bamboo forest, prompting the sitting Team 7 to scramble to their feet and get behind their sensei. To kill a certain man. The boy quoted. What a crazy, crazy little world it is, am I right, Uchiha? Sasuke growled but stayed behind Jiraiya. He couldn't kill this opponent. Yet. My goal for the future is to kill a certain man also, but it appears that you already know who it is that you're going to kill. Lucky bastard. I'm still searching for my prey. The Jinchuriki stroked his chin in feigned deliberation. What if we're both going after the same person? Oh, that would be bad for you. I bet that I'd get to him long before you do. Stay away from Itachi. Sasuke spat. He took everything from me. I deceived to be the one who ends his miserable life. Naruto grinned manically. Messing with this kid was like punching a drunken monkey in the face. It never got old. The boy shook his head in amusement and looked to his godfather. Dog boy, princess, duck hair. How come everybody got a nickname except for me? He whined. The toad sage quirked an eyebrow at the very dangerous and very annoying creature he called his godson. Okay, fine then. Jackass, introduce yourself? Naruto's forehead crinkled in confusion. Jackass? But my name is Oh, I see what you did there. You clever dog, you. His godfather gave him a hurry-up gesture, and the boy obliged. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, though most people address me as you or fucker or you fucker. But that doesn't really matter, seeing as though I have a nasty little habit of killing people who piss me off. Ino's eyes went wide. Oh yes. Today, Naruto. The boy sighed. Man, you became so uptight after I stopped attacking you in your sleep. Perhaps I should bring the practice back? Anyway, I like to go camping in the mountains and hunting for wild game. I dislike people who disrespect me or my pack, and my goal is to one day fight a foe who is worthy of my jaws. Suddenly his eyes lit up. Oh, and one more thing. Two flaming tails began to skate across the stone platform. I'm the Kyuubi.